Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on which part of the world you're in. Um, I'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak to you today. Obviously, in a time around the world where we're experiencing some very big challenges related to the COVID-19 pandemic. I was very pleased to listen to Dr. Veeramani's introduction. It's always a great pleasure to listen to him speak and to listen to him extol the virtues of Periyar and other Indian rationalist and humanist activists. In fact, I was very pleased to have been able to meet Dr. Veeramani again in January when I visited the Atheist Centre for their 80th year anniversary. So I would like to maybe just start by saying a little bit about myself, about Humanists International, and a little bit about what I would like to share with you today. As was said, I'm the Chief Executive of Humanists International, which has been around since 1952 and was the successor to an organisation called the World Union of Freethinkers, which existed since the mid-19th century. Humanists International has always been, it was known up until 2019 as the International Humanist and Ethical Union, and it has always been a very big partner with Indian organisations. In fact, the Indian Radical Humanist Organisation was one of the founding partners of the organisation back in the 50s, and we have always had a very close association with humanist and progressive social activists in India. I have had the pleasure to visit India twice, the first time in 2018 at the World Atheist Conference in Tamil Nadu, where I got to meet Dr. Veeramani and many other Periyar activists myself, which was a very great pleasure. So yes, Humanists International has always had a very close association with organisations in India, and I think more so than other global human rights organisations and European-based organisations, which is what we are, I think has had more of an understanding of the struggles that people in India face with regards to social discrimination, the caste system, and also I think more of an understanding about the amazing contribution to human rights, to ideas of equality. I'll talk shortly about the very essence of the self-respect movement as being a quintessentially humanist idea and obviously a very radical idea. And these, I think, we've had a good understanding of. But Harish has asked me to give almost a humanist perspective on Periyar, or maybe I could even change that to a European humanist perspective on Periyar, because I will say very clearly at the start that I am not in any way an expert in Indian politics, Indian social affairs. You have a number of speakers on your list today which will be able to give much more expertise on those matters than me. What I can do today, though, is to offer you my perspective, perhaps the perspective of other European humanists on the work of Periyar International, on the legacy of Periyar and Ambedkar and other amazing Indian social reformers, and really just offer you that reflection for you to take away and to consider for the work of Periyar International and Periyar European Union organisation, because I think what the mission of your organisation is to promote the work of Periyar and to promote not only the life and legacy and the works of Periyar, but also the ideas, the fundamental humanistic ideas that he stood for. I think it's a very, very noble cause. And I think, again, with the very clear health warning of not being an expert in Indian politics, and I think when we discuss the world's largest democracy, of so many people, I have to be careful not to make generalizations. However, we can say that India, like many countries around the world, is facing somewhat of a crisis in its democracy. We've seen throughout India and throughout other parts of the world this rise of a collective nationalistic and collectivist ideology of Hindutva, of Hindu ideology. And I know from listening to people like Dr. Veeramani, other Indian reformers and social activists, that the effects this has on people in India is very stark. We've seen, in fact, when I visited Tamil Nadu in 2018, I was honoured to unveil a series of portraits to, let's say, the martyrs of the humanist cause in India. Talking about people like Dr. Dabolkar, who was obviously murdered because of his promotion of non-discrimination and humanism. And these are very concerning times. My other friend, I'm sure will be known to you, is also facing many death threats and many very concerning charges in India. So it's concerning times, and I think that the work of Dr. Veeramani and Periyar is needed now more than ever. So that's by way of an introduction. Let me just say a little bit about Humanist International. So we have existed since the 50s, as I said, and have been a world union of organisations. We count in our numbers very many organisations from India. I mentioned before the Indian Radical Humanist Organisation, the Atheist Centre, which I'm sure many of you will know. In fact, we were very saddened, obviously, to see earlier this year the death of Dr. Vijayam, from the Atheist Centre, who's done an amazing job to promote Indian social reform, secular social work, a whole host of amazing social reforms. And I was very pleased to have been able to see him again with Dr. Veeramani in January when I visited India to help them mark the 80th anniversary of the Atheist Centre. So along with these partners, we have helped to build the humanist movement. We have a number of programs. We give out a series of grants to organizations to help them develop and buy new resources, promote themselves, and so on. We also do a series of events promoting the humanist ideas at places like the United Nations, regional cooperation councils, parliamentary forums, and so on. And I was actually very pleased to have been able to deliver a statement to the UN Human Rights Council back in 2018, highlighting the issue of caste discrimination. This was a statement that was which was developed in cooperation with a number of Indian humanist organisations, and I was very pleased to be able to deliver that at the United Nations. I think, in particular, the caste system and the discrimination based on caste is something which we can say in the European perspective there is a growing awareness of this issue, and I think organisations like Periyar International, like other Indian humanist organisations, have had a very big role in trying to promote the understanding of this awful practice and to try and help campaign for its abolishment, obviously, in India, and for the enactment of many of those provisions in your constitution and in your law which do ban this awful practice. But we know, of course, in many cases throughout India, it's met with impunity, that this discrimination continues unchecked, which is a very great shame. So that is the work of Humanist International, and I think it beds in, or it meshes very well with the work of Periyar, with his works and his legacies, and also with the work of Periyar International. So let me now talk a little bit and share my perspective as a European humanist, perhaps, about Periyar and the work of your organisation. I think it's very important in a number of ways, the work to promote Periyar. One is because of the intrinsic value of Periyar's ideology. We can say that the Periyar's focus on self-respect, on the idea of individual autonomy, individual self-worth, the idea that people should cherish and take time to develop their inner selves as part of their collective society. I think it's a very radical idea and something which I think the organisation should be very proud of and help promote. Also, if I can say, this is not a very proud thing to say, but I don't think this aspect of South Indian and Indian culture and Indian uh, identity is very well known in Europe. So I think to hear about the establishment of this organisation and across the European Union is it's a very exciting time, because I think it should be better known throughout Europe. The ideas of Periyar and the whole struggle for human rights, for self-determination throughout Tamil Nadu and throughout India as well. So I think that's a very important thing. But like I say, something which is not very well known at the moment. I wanted also just to highlight one thing. Through reading, and I say again that I am not an expert in the works of Periyar, but through reading some of Periyar's comments and some of the issues that he highlighted, it reminded me of this phrase, which I will tell you where it comes from in a minute, but first of all, just let me read it. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Now that is a very profound sentence, and I think it's one that resonates very much with the work of Periyar. And this is actually from the preamble to the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. And I think when we look at the work of Periyar that came obviously way before that declaration was signed and promulgated in the 40s and the 50s, we can see the essence of this international universal human rights based on the dignity and the worth of the individual really shining through. And I think that's something which is important to remember. I think for many European humanists and for many humanists across the world, the values and the ideas of humanism are seen as a Western idea. They're seen as part of the Western Enlightenment, and the connection, ancient as well as modern, to Asian, to Indian history, free thought, is sometimes not quite well understood amongst Europeans. So I think the work of your organisation and to promote Periyar's ideas in Europe is very timely and very important. So that's part of what I think the feedback I would like to share with you today. And also I think it's important to remember that the values of humanism, they are highlighted by individuals, throughout time and history. There's of course many examples in which the ideas of humanism, which are, the idea of self-worth, the idea of individual autonomy, the idea of universality, that by virtue of being a human being on this earth, that we are entitled to some dignity and to some self-worth. These are timeless and universal values, and I think it's very important that we hold on to that and that we recognise that these values do not belong to one culture or to one people and so on, which I think is very important. It's very important to understand that throughout cultures around the world, these ideas take hold and they don't belong to any particular one of us. So yes, and also I know I can share with you another reflection from mine. Last year, Periyar International organised a conference alongside the American Humanist Association in Washington, DC. In fact, I believe Dr. Veeramani was there as well to help organise that conference. And I can tell you that just as I hope this conference will be a great success, that conference was a great success. We have very many members in the United States, and I spoke to a lot of people who attended that conference, which it was their first introduction to the work of Periyar, to the work of Periyar International. And I can tell you that it created a lot of interest, a lot of very positive feedback. And again, perhaps I can even say that it challenged some prejudices or some misunderstandings, or it helped to raise the awareness of the history of free thought, of humanistic ideas in India. And I think that's a really important thing, because the work of Periyar, along with the work of people like M.N. Roy people like Dr. Ambedkar. Amongst, at least I can say, European people and perhaps even North American people, it isn't as well known as it should be. And I think that organisations like this have a really good job and a big job ahead of them to try and promote these ideas. So, and I think, as I said at the beginning, without going into the complicated details of Indian politics, I think we can say for sure that these ideas are needed now more than ever. You know, we need to be able to challenge discrimination and to promote human rights and individual self-worth, and we need authentic voices and ideas to be able to champion that work. I think that's very clear, and even I can speak more confidently about the situation of European politics because that's somewhere I know with a bit more personal experience. But you know, we can see here in Europe that people are becoming more fractured. There's a rise in populism, a rise in xenophobia. There's a rise in protectionism and inward lookingness, and I think we need these humanistic ideas like what Periyar was promoting. We need the idea of self-worth, of human dignity and human values to help promote integration and peace and a better type of politics. You know, we will always have in politics disagreements about the best way forward, the best way to achieve human flourishing, and it's not only about the ends that we meet, it's also about the way in which we do our politics. It needs to be based on principles of humanism, I think, and that's very important. So yes, I would like to sort of summarize what I've been saying there just by saying that I think the work of your organization is really very important to promote Periyar's works and his philosophy, his humanistic philosophy of individual autonomy, self-worth, the idea of growing as an individual and being an autonomous agent with dignity, and investing in yourself as an agent of change. You know, understanding your place in society, but also your inner self and your inner dignity as an individual. And I also, like I said, that the other angle I would like to try and or reflection I would like to try and share with your organisation is the idea that I think it's important that these ideas from India are shared. You know, that the ideas of humanism or rationalism are not seen by people in Europe as a Western idea, but the ideas of Periyar, Ambedkar, so on, are seen as what they are. You know, people with authentic views and a mission to change society for the better. I think that's really very important. And I think, for what it's worth, from Humanists International, you will always have a friend and a partner to help share these ideas, and we're very happy to help in whatever way that might be. But I think from what I've seen in recent years from the work of Periyar International and hopefully this new organisation in Europe, I think you have a very exciting time ahead of you to promote these ideas, and you know, the ideas are very valuable and worth promotion. So I wish you every success in that endeavour. So thank you.